Podcast! You're listening to the Band Life Podcast, your number one guide on how to run a profitable band. Here are your hosts, Pete Stannard and Adam West, the Wizard of Rock! Hello, and welcome to episode 4. Wow. Believe it or not, episode 4. We've lasted this long. Episode 4 of the Band Life Podcast. And this episode is all about having a business mindset. And I am your host, Pete Stannard, and I'm here with my voluptuously bearded co-host, the Wizard of Rock himself, Mr. Adam West.
Thank you.
Again, I'm going to sort out a round of applause, I think, as a sound thing.
Yeah.
For every time I introduce you. And if we ever have guests, I feel like
the round of applause should be this.
just a slow clap. Well done, boys.
Just do it. Just do it.
You've managed to get here. You've lived this long.
There you go. Episode 4.
Episode 4. You didn't drink the paint. You survived.
Stayed away from the paint.
Survived another week somehow.
Yeah. I only come on this podcast to have a laugh, mate. That's it.
That's it. Well, that's what we're here for. We are.
That's not true.
It's not true. We're here to educate, but we're here to have fun at the same time. And if you can't have fun, what's the point? That's what I say. That's what I say to my kids. Go have fun. Don't grow up too quick.
Yes. Take this paint and go and see Mummy.
Exactly. I give one paint, one petrol, and we'll see who lives.
Imagine that. Your wife's like, Daddy, busy? Okay. Go and take this paint and paint the studio. Off you go.
Exactly. You go for it. That would be great.
Yeah, let's not jinx it. Okay, then.
Let's not. Let's get into this. Right. I'm actually really quite excited by this episode because I know it's not a sexy topic. having a music business mindset, it's people are going to see that title and be like, what is he talking about? Why is he excited by this? Well, I'm excited by this because this is the foundation that success rests upon. Okay, and I try to explain this to my clients in strategy meetings and to your good self. I'm going to shameless plug my strategy meetings.
Do it, shameless plug.
Shameless plug. So when we're sort of talking about goals and all the rest of it, kind of the way that I explain this mindset, the music business mindset, is that you can kind of picture a really exquisite palace. Now that palace represents you at the pinnacle of your music career. Now, if the foundations of that palace aren't right, if they're not built well, then that palace is going to basically become a very expensive pile of rubble at the end of the day. So you have to get this right. You have to have your head on correctly. Otherwise, the foundation stuff, it's the work that nobody wants to do. Most artists don't want to do this because, like laying foundations, like literal foundations, it's dirty work. You got to dig holes. You're in the mud. You're pouring concrete in. You're putting in the footings and all this sort of stuff. And it's the stuff that very, very few people like to do. You didn't get into music to start a business. I don't know anyone when they start picking up guitars or learning instruments going, I really want to run a business and think about marketing and all this other stuff that goes with it. Nobody's done that. And nobody's, as far as I'm aware, is kind of wanting to do that stuff. But if they want to do the things like earn money from their music, if you want to go play big shows, want to go on tour, if you want all this other stuff, especially if you're an independent, if you want to be a 100% independent artist where your music is making your money, then this stuff is fundamental. And without it, one of two things will happen. You will either be marginally successful for a very short period of time, or it just won't happen at all. It's as simple as that. This is very, very important to anyone in any genre, any music artist in any genre. And this is actually fundamental to anyone who wants to start any business. This is how I think about things, okay? Very broadly, if I was going to put my career into two buckets, as it were, I have a business bucket and I have a creative bucket. And this episode is very much about the business side. We're going to throw creativity into the bin. It's gone. And it's all about business. And I am a very hard businessman. I'm like, who's that Michael Gecko guy from, is it The Firm? One of the Firm? Is it The Firm?
Oh, I don't know. I don't watch much TV, mate.
That one is a film. It's Tom Cruise and Michael Douglas, and he's a very hard businessman.
I think you have to be anyway, don't you? Really, as much as most of us don't want to be. Like when you said back then about most of us, if not all of us, came into the music because we wanted to be like the people we listened to over all the years. But this is why I'm keen to get on board with it as well, and why we hooked up eventually. Is because you do reach a point. I think it's not so bad when you're in your 20s or 30s, do you? So, not to distract too much from what we're going to be talking about, but I think we you know, it's a bit like pensions. Nobody thinks about pensions. They're just like, well, you know, I'm not going to think about that. But it's like, well, you're going to have to at some point, because there's going to come a period where you're not going to be able to work and you're going to have no money. What are you going to do to survive? So it's a bit like the band. You get to a point where you're like, okay, so say I'm in my late 40s, early 50s. Do I really want to be doing what I was doing in my 20s? Most people don't. Me, if I still got the jazz, the energy and the physical capability to do it, then I will. It makes a difference to me. Age is just a number. But it'd be nice to know, well, look, I've been at this for a long time now. Wouldn't it be nice to sort of, I think your mind changes and the way you look at life changes anyway, doesn't it, as you go through life. And I think it does come a point where it is important, because do you really want to be doing like your 9 to 5 job full time, and then the music and then the gigs? At some point you kind of want to go, well, let's get that sort of balance either right in the middle, or like the music turns into the business, and then, you know, you can sort of lay off the work a bit, because ultimately, you know, it'd be nice, as you say, to get paid and look at it from a business standpoint. But for me, anyway, at least I wouldn't want the passion and the creative side of what I'm doing to become like work. But I'd like to keep that balance, which is why I think this episode is key to most people. Sure. Yeah,
definitely. I'd hate to hit retirement age and then feel like I could actually then start living in a way.
Depressing.
But yeah, it's like, okay, so I've spent like 60 odd years kind of eking my way through life, you know, and I don't want that. And yeah, and I'm not looking at it from the perspective of, oh, I need to be sort of mega rich, you know, I need to be a multi-billionaire or anything like that. I just want to enjoy what I enjoy and provide for my family. And that's it. If anything above that, it's a bonus. It's a bonus.
Amen to that, sir.
Where do we start with this, I suppose? I'd kind of want to start with, well, how do we make money in the music industry? You know, as a music artist, what do you do? You know, where is that money being generated from? All music artists, whether you're us or Taylor Swift. You have to you look at things from a revenue stream. There's multiple revenue streams. It's not like your 9-to-5 job where you go to work, you do your work, you get paid at the end of the month. It's not how this works. Okay.
Right, so get your notepad and pen ready. Come on, boy.
Yeah.
Look on mine, look.
Mate, he's there.
Let's go.
Excellent. I've got six revenue streams. I've got music sales / streaming, ticket sales, merchandise, publishing, monetizing on social media, and sponsorship. Now, those last two are generally ones, or those last three, actually, I'd say, is generally ones that most artists don't think about. And they don't really put a lot of effort into. Even the merch stuff, it can be a very kind of, well, I've got a Shopify, or I've got a table at my gigs, and that's it. There's no real kind of marketing strategy behind it or anything like that. Most are looking at things like, especially streaming. Oh, I want to make lots of money from streaming. It's like, no, you're not. Yeah, you might get some, but you're probably not going to get a huge amount. Yeah, but it's not to say that there isn't a revenue stream there. There's not. You can make money from streaming. Whether it's fair and all the rest of it, I don't want to bring that into this discussion. Okay. The rest of it, but you can receive a royalty rate from that. And obviously, the way in which these revenue streams are functioning and how successful you are within those revenue streams, the more money you're going to make. And that's what business is. It's about making money. That's the cut and dry of it. A lot of these things are sales led. And what I probably would suggest is, depending on how you're running things as a band, just concentrate on one revenue stream at a time and get that right. At least get the foundations from each revenue stream down, and then look to see how you can build upon that and try to work out what works and what doesn't work, and then double down on the stuff that does work and get rid of the stuff that doesn't. But I'm not going to get too deep into that, because I think each one of these are individual episodes by themselves. So I'm not going to dig too much into those. But I just wanted to highlight things, especially things like sponsorship. Yeah, no one's thinking about, or very few people thinking about sponsorship. And sponsors do actually pay their sponsors sometimes. It's not unheard of. No,
that's true.
But they also look at it from the point of view of, if I'm sponsored by Mesa Boogie, which I've got an amp there, if Mesa Boogie want to sponsor me, they're more than welcome to. Well, this amp and cab, it's about $2,500 worth of equipment. So I've saved $2,500. So I could put, in theory, what I should be doing is thinking, well, there's $2,500 saved. How can I then put that $2,500 into the business of running the band? So could I spread that, over marketing? Could I invest it in some way into the business of the band? So it's kind of looking at it from where you're saving money. How do you just go, oh, okay, I'm going to use that $2,000 to go on holiday? Or something like that, or am I going to reinvest it into the band and see what drives things a bit more forward, what moves the needle for the band? And sometimes that takes money and investment. When you start a band, you are starting a small business, and the mindset stuff is going to be the same. So kind of moving on from that, creatives in the music industry, I'd say pretty much all of them are self-employed. Whether you agree with that or not, do you agree with that, Adam? As a statement, I suppose.
When you say 99% of creatives, how do you mean creators? Creatives as in people who write their own music, or?
Yes. Yeah. So if you're in a band and you're writing music, the band itself, everyone in that band is self-employed, because you don't have a boss as such. It's not like you're going to get a PAYE, here in the UK. If you work for someone and your tax code is called PAYE,
Right.
then you are employed by someone. If my situation as a music producer, I'm self-employed. I am the boss. If I don't generate the money, I don't get paid. It's as simple as that. And it's the same thing with any kind of creative. When I was doing a lot of session work, when I was a session guitarist, I was, again, self-employed. I've been self-employed for most of my life. I've had the odd little job here and there just to kind of fill things out. But 99% of the time, self-employed. I have an accountant that has to sort out all of my finances because I can't do it myself. I'm not that savvy with accounting stuff. They're working out tax returns and all the rest of it, all the balance sheets and all that sort of stuff. I don't do it for myself. I have an accountant that does it all for me, and I pay him to do that, and he works it all out. I just go, there we go. There's my invoices. There's my receipts and all this other stuff. You go sort that out with HMRC and Companies House. Greenwave Productions is set up as a limited company, which could be an option for you and your band. It really depends on how far you want to take things. The advantage of having yourselves as a limited company is that if anything happens, if your business goes pop, so if Greenwave Productions goes pop for whatever reason, and there's any kind of credit involved, then those creditors can't come after my personal assets. So they can't go after my house, they can't take my car, they can't take my children away, sadly. No.
Daddy loves you, really.
I love you, children. But you're the reason I'm in this much debt. No.
Let's not go down that road.
Let's not go down that road. So all they can do is take the assets from the business. They can't take any personal assets from you. So it really depends if you've got, let's say you've got a permanent rehearsal space that you've got like a lease on, for example, and the band gets dissolved and you want to come out of that lease. Well, they can't then go, okay, well, we're going to take your car to pay for the rest of that lease, if that makes sense. Right. So that would be quite a good example for band, because there are quite a few professional bands out there that go, okay, what I want to do is just have a rehearsal space whenever we need it, and we will have it as a long-term lease, and we'll just pop in and out as and when we can do it, sort of thing. So we're kind of taking out having to phone up rehearsal space every week, something like that. From that perspective, it's quite a good thing to do if you've got any kind of lease agreements or anything like that involved with the band, and you might want to think about setting the band up as a limited company. The downside is that you have to each year do a report to Companies House. They like to look at your accounts and make sure that you're not money laundering and doing all that all that beautiful stuff. Again,
so can I ask a question a minute?
Go for it.
I'm sure everybody is probably going to ask this question too. At what point then do you decide to set the band as a business? So at what point do you decide that? Do you decide it straight away? Do you decide it when you're doing regular gigs? Do you decide it when there's a regular income coming in? So if we just use me as an example, right? Because if I'm thinking about it, I mean, do I want that headache of a limited company when I'm not generating any gigs at the moment and no money?
If you're not generating anything, I wouldn't worry about the limited company stuff. It's something just as a future nod, as it were. Very much a future nod. Like if even the tax implications and things like that. If the band's generating money and let's say you're working, The Inland Revenue or the HMRC looks at whatever money is generated for you personally, that will go on top of your wage. So the tax implications there become slightly different because they don't see go, oh, you've got an income here and an income there. They say, well, you've got this as an income as a total amount, and we're going to tax you on that. And if that brings you into certain brackets and things like that, you can get taxed quite heavily. The advantage of being a limited company is that you come under what's called corporation tax, which means you won't get taxed anything above the thresholds of like £75,000 a year. So you're not going to get taxed in the same way and things like that. But I wouldn't start sort of even thinking about going down that road until you are generating money. And especially if you're generating money that you're then kind of divvying out to the band, as it were. And the HMRC are going to look at that like, okay, well, you're generating this income on top of your income that you're already earning and things like that.
So almost regular sales for regular merch, and it's got on the emphasis of regular sales on, say, music, regular sales on merch, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, right.
Yes. And I think the merch, again, I think they've changed the rules around merch quite recently here in the UK. Sorry if you're outside of the UK, but here in the UK, our lovely government that we adore in this country at the moment, which I don't think we do, they say anything over £1,000, then you can be taxed on it as something just to keep an eye on. I think it's because the government saw that a lot of people were using things like Vinted as an app and eBay and stuff like that to sell clothes, especially second-hand clothes and things like that.
Can we just say no? Can we just say no?
If everyone in the country went, I'm not going to pay a tax, like the poll tax in the 80s when that came in, and everyone just went, no, we're not going to pay it. And nobody paid it, and they had to pull it. That was a great day when Margaret Thatcher fell on that sword.
Yeah, that was big.
But, and this just doesn't seem to be that collective kind of appetite.
It's getting to the point now, isn't it? Yeah, it is. It's getting to the point now where I was having this conversation with somebody, and it went, I said, whatever little, basically the government has looked at everything, or they put everything on a big ass table and they've gone, right, who's making money, were they paying something, how are they doing it? I mean, see, here's the thing, right? People don't mind paying their way in the system. I don't mind, okay? I go out there on the limb and say that. I do not mind, okay? But what I don't like is like what most people don't like is when they're basically getting butt buggered. Now it's like you say, with anything over £1,000 that you sell on merch, they're taxing. Mm-hmm. So that was a new one on me. Didn't realise that, and so they've looked at that and going, we got independent people making money.
If you are a creative in the music industry, you will be self-employed, unless you're like a music teacher or something like that. But then arguably, is that a creative thing? And there's some downsides to that. Okay, there's no sick pay, there's no holiday pay. There's no maternity or paternity entitlement. Obviously, you have to sort out your own tax, your national insurance, your pension, and all that sort of stuff. And the big one, if you don't work, you don't get paid.
And I think that's what might put a lot of people off. For the wise musician that's probably looked a little into this, some of that there is like, it's not very rewarding. And as you say, you don't get a holiday. You have to bring people in that you've employed. And so a lot of people go, nah, do you know what? I'd rather somebody else take care of that because I don't get any free time. Now, I'm interested to know, since I'm you as your co-host, but I'm also you as a sort of a learning advocate as well. And it's interesting to me. It's like, okay, can you set this up and work? Because I mean, obviously, you've done a pretty good job, I'm guessing, with how you've set things up. Obviously, you've had to delegate a lot, and there's a lot that you probably got to worry about that I don't have to. I let somebody else do. I go in, do the work, and I get paid, and it's nice and simple. So what I would be interested in is actually getting the balance quite nice between making money, still staying in work. Because for me, I wouldn't like to deal with most of that unless I'm delegating it. What it really does, essentially, is go, okay, right, well, that's more for you to probably be concerned about, and there's less time for you to write music and so on. So
Adam, there are some upsides to being self-employed. Okay.
Let's share with them.
The first one, and this is probably the most important one, is that you get to do something that you're passionate about every day. Now, I love what I do, whether it's writing music, recording music, producing music, working with other bands. Pretty much every aspect of it I love to do, especially if it's more creative and things like that. Some of the other stuff, obviously, there's some downsides to it. Like, I'm not a big fan of creating content for social media. I'm going to be brutally honest. I didn't get into doing music on any level to become a digital marketer. And most don't at the end of the day. And this is why I think musicians are so bad at this, at marketing, because they just don't want to do it. It's not what they envisaged doing when they picked up their instrument.
It's a brave new world today, unfortunately, isn't it?
It is. The other thing is, I get to write songs, I get to record songs, play live shows. I can potentially tour the world, and my potential for earnings from a business point of view is pretty much infinite. You're now getting billionaire music artists. Taylor Swift's latest tour is $1 billion tour. It's the first tour to crack $1 billion.
Oh my God.
So, your earning potential as a self-employed person or as a business is unlimited in a roundabout way. Like any business, if you start a business, you can earn as much money as you like. And another advantage, you can set that level yourself. The harder you work, the more you earn. That's kind of the thought, as long as you're working hard in the right way. So that's
absolutely.
the important part. Yeah. That in itself is very important. But I think there is kind of two approaches that most bands and artists have. And one is the DIY approach and one is the collab approach. And I think this is kind of the genius of this very podcast, Adam, is that you're very much a DIYer.
Yep.
And I'm, with my band, with Chris Tricks, is very much more of a collaboration, more of a collab approach.
Okay.
But there is a caveat to that, I think. I don't think either of us can be considered 100% collab and 100% DIY. And no matter what level we look at it, right. Because it's not like your latest album, you went into a recording studio, you had engineers and stuff like that for your latest album. So you've worked collaboratively from that perspective. And if you're looking at this from a business sense, so if you're creating your product, which is your music, right, then you've worked collaboratively.
Got you.
So I think doing things completely DIY, as in everything falls on one person in the band, is an insane thing to do.
I am insane.
Absolutely insane. Kudos to you for taking it on. But and what I did, I've made a list here of all the things that if you're going to take every aspect and do this yourself, and you've got to think along the lines of, they don't just have to be done, but they have to be done to at least a really high-ish standard at the very least. They can't be half-assed, shall we say?
Absolutely not. Okay,
so
let's have a look then.
You as a DIYer, you have to be a musician, a producer, a recording engineer, a mixing engineer, a mastering engineer, a videographer, and then the subparts of being a videographer is location manager, camera operator, editor, hair and makeup, set design, lighting, costume design. And then you've got marketing manager, business manager, tour manager, logistics, agent, marketing and promotion, and the subsections of marketing and promotion would be digital, print, radio, and television. Then you've got graphic design, sales, so merchandising and physical copies, or mechanical copies as we would call it in the industry. Then you've got ticket sales. Then you've got legal, which I would highly advise. Do not do that as a DIYer.
Okay.
Do not sort any of your legal stuff out yourself. And any kind of legal aspects we give on this podcast is not legal advice. Okay. We are not lawyers. Okay. Just make that clear. Okay. We will not accept responsibility for your legal concerns. Okay. And last thing I've got is publishing and licensing. So there's 16 facets in that list that and that was just a brain dump that I did. I think if I actually sat down and really kind of flushed this out, I would get at least another 10 in there, something like that.
So basically, you need team support or other individuals to help. So that's actually an awful lot. See, and this is the thing. I think what most people do, they go, yeah, so if you use me as an example, I'll go, yeah, okay, I'll sort that out, I'll sort that, I'll sort that, and I'll sort that. And then it's like, aha, but are you doing this? And I'm nuts. I do all that.
Yeah, and kudos to you.
Well, kudos to anybody that does.
Yeah, it's seriously. I'm not saying that either approach is right or wrong as such. I'm just saying that there's just different ways of working, and if you are an extremely busy person in other areas, then finding someone, and it's the way in which you find these people and how you initially talk to them and sort out the criteria, as it were, for what would be considered a candidate to do that task, as it were, which we will get into in this episode, because we're currently talking about the DIY stuff, but we are going to go into the collab approach as well. And there's a way in which you work, and there's some good practical advice that I'm going to give you that will help to kind of hopefully shift things from getting people to kind of look at how you want people to do things and how they expect to be done, as it were. But we'll get into that. There is some fundamental things that we need to kind of discuss about. Both approaches need a foundation themselves, okay? So, and here's some practical advice for you. So the first thing that I would suggest you do is just work out your tasks and the goals for those tasks, okay? Note them down either in a Google Doc or back of a fag box or wherever you make your notes, you know. But
now you're old.
In some way, physically write down, you know, back of a Rizzler paper. Each of those tasks, I would put them into one of 4 categories, okay? So 1 is I can do this myself.
Yep.
2, I say in my network. 3 is amateur or student. 4 is professional. Just to kind of elaborate on those. So obviously I can do myself. It's obvious. It's something that you are doing yourself. Yep. But there's a caveat to that, is in your calendar, block out time. I live and die by my Google Calendar.
It's because of you I started to use it a lot more, although I implemented when I was working with another chap, regrettably, because it's Google. But I was like, okay, this got some advantages, and obviously started using it. And when you mentioned about the dock, like I got one here, and I got an idea, because it's okay to have pieces of paper, but eventually they get lost. At least with a document, it's a lot more organized, and it is, like you said, Google Doc. I highly recommend it. Definitely.
Yeah. And so I block everything out because I am a serial procrastinator, and I work best doing small chunks.
Yeah.
So I'll do like an hour on a task, and then I'll have a little break, and then I'll do a different task for an hour, and then I'll have a little break, and then I do a different, and then I'll have lunch or something. And that's how I work. Because if I do like 4 hours work, and I'll end up on YouTube or TikTok or something, and I'll be like, okay, I can justify sitting there for the next hour watching some sort of video on how to record guitars or something, because I've done 4 hours work. And it's literally, it's a psychological thing of, if I've done 4 hours work, then I can sit for an hour and do nothing, or whatever. Whereas if I've only done like an hour, then I haven't got that excuse in my head to go, I could do whatever. Do you know what I mean? So that's kind of how I approach productivity. Productivity tip there for you, Adam.
Tip taker.
Some people can do that. Some people can do like, I can work 10 hours a day. Like Steve Vai, the guitarist Steve Vai, he practices guitar like 6 hours a day, non-stop.
Oh, stupid.
That's like, okay, that's great. I can't do that. When I practice guitar, it's like 20 minutes, little break, 20 minutes, little break. And that's how I work.
See, that's anyway. The same with me. Yeah.
I can't do it.
The brain goes, go do something else. I'm like, right, off I go. And then it's like, go back to the music.
Yeah. It's one of those things. So I've become very self-aware of that. So with especially like even like practice guitar, I've got that chunked out. I've got songwriting, I've got that chunked out. Yeah. So every whether it's a creative or a business thing, my Google Calendar is chunk. Yeah. Even look after your children. It's chunked out.
Believe it or not, that's 8 down the list.
Yeah, it's a long list of tasks. Look after your children is at the bottom of that.
It's a sad world we live in, isn't it?
Sad world.
Bloody musicians, I bet.
So that's I can do myself. So there's work there to be done, even if you're doing it yourself. Okay.
Right.
Now, in my network, again, it's kind of self-explanatory. Is that if you know someone. So obviously your band members are going to be your first crutch, as it were. But my wife's a photographer. She hates doing people, but she has done band photography for me in the past. But she's done like the photography for the studio here. She did things like that, and the pictures look great. She's a very, very talented photographer, very good. But she hates taking pictures of people, probably because I drive her up the wall. Most of the time. So, and again, if you know someone that makes t-shirts, let them make t-shirts for you. Let them do that. If you know a graphic designer, let them do that for you. Ask them nicely, and they will probably do things for you. But we'll get on to how to approach people. Amateur and student now. This depends on the task because they tend to just be a bit of a have-a-go hero sort of thing. But things like simple tasks like uploading social media, helping to create content. So if you're doing stuff as a band and you want shots where you're moving around in rehearsals and things like that, just to make that video a bit more interesting. So it's not just like, it's just Adam in the corner and no one else sort of thing. Having someone that's just going to come in and just literally walk around the room, spend 10 minutes doing that in a rehearsal. It's not a big ask, at the end of the day.
Well, that's easy for me. I've got my dad doing that, so that's check, tick.
Great, done. So that would be, amateur, because he's not a professional videographer as far as I'm aware. But so he'd fall under amateur. And students are a really good one because they, like student filmmakers, they're looking to make films. and they're looking to make music videos. They're looking to do this sort of stuff.
Said this in the beginning. Yeah, they're great.
Digital marketers.
Yeah, that's right.
My nephew, he's done a degree in digital marketing. Get him to do stuff. He's not doing our socials, by the way. So
That's the thing. That's
that he is.
But I think that's something I need to do. Really, is get somebody to upload, give them access to the Google Drive. So look, there's the videos that I've done a prac. Go through them, upload some of the best bits, comical bits, guitar bits. Work on that, and that's the other issue as well. The only reason I think most people don't is because it's like they might want paying, and no one's making any money. This is why this podcast is really important for all of us, so we could okay, how do we generate a bit of money to lighten the workload and eventually go, look, I'll give you a couple of quid. Because the thing is, I got a chap helping me in work. In fact, he's done a lot for me for no return other than cuddles and chocolate, really. So
we will get onto that though. There's some stuff. Yeah, we're not going to get onto the cuddles and chocolate.
Oh, that's okay. That's all I can afford.
That's a whole other episode.
Yeah, well, that's all I can afford. So I thought we'd get it.
And obviously the last but for is professional, and sometimes I think you got to bite the bullet on stuff, and you're going to have to pay a professional for it. And kind of a rule of thumb is if you're selling stuff, then that has to be done to a professional standard at the end of the day, I think, anyway. Because if it's not, then you're just going to let your fan base down and you're going to lose fans. As a DIY, what I would do is once I've got my list of tasks and goals, I would set up a band meeting. And in that meeting, I would run through that list and see which band member wants to take what task.
Okay.
Another good side of this is what will probably come to light is that someone will go, oh, I can't do this, but I know someone that can, or I know someone who might be willing to, and that sort of, and then you can extend that out, and that then gets put into your network, as it were.
Yeah.
If every band member wants the band to succeed, certainly in a rapid way or in a quick way, then they should be on board with doing stuff at the end of the day. If you've got a band member that's just like, no, I don't want to do any of it, and all the rest, all that, all I want to do is hit drums or strum guitars.
Yeah.
That's fine. But then I would go down the route of, okay, well, we need to look at what people getting off the back end. If you've got one guy is going, I don't want to do anything, and you've got another guy going, well, I'm going to take on all the live stuff, so I'm going to sort out all the promotion for the live stuff, I'm going to talk to promoters, I'm going to do all of that stuff, then the guy that's just hitting drums or strumming guitars, he should not get as much as the guy that's sorting all the live stuff out.
When you hand it over to everybody, each having a role and responsibility, it works as long as the band's working and everybody's getting on. But the moment somebody drops out, if it becomes it's not very amicable and it's a bit there's a bit of malice involved, then you really got to basically go, right, clean slate to start all again, because they'll either take passwords or codes with them, or they'll shut the site down, or and I just think sometimes it's really only since I've been talking to you where I've sort of really sat down with it and gone, okay, can I take the workload and hand it to everybody else? And we've briefly talked about it, and no one's really in that position just yet to do it. So personally, I would rather carry all the workload because I know I'll get it done, because I'm trying to make this work. Now, if somebody shares the idea with me, then I can go, okay, fine.
So if you are, like I say, if you want to be 100% DIY, which I don't think anyone can be, this is, even from a music production point of view, you're probably going to have some kind of recording engineer or something. When you go into a studio, you're employing someone to do a task.
Yeah.
But that mindset, even, I mean, if you think about it, even when you start your band, that is a collaborative way of working.
Yeah.
And the way in which you find those musicians is kind of, can this person do a job better than me?
Yeah.
I presume your drummer can play drums better than you can, Adam.
Absolutely.
So why wouldn't you use your drummer to hit drums? So right from the outset, it's a collaborative thing. Do you want some advice on working collaboratively? So I'm going back. Do you want some advice on how to get people in a collaborative way? How you should approach working with people? You've got your notebook. Excellent stuff.
You get your notebooks too, boys and giggles.
Too.
Pete's offering free stuff.
Free advice.
Free advice, okay.
Like this whole podcast is all about. Okay. So the way that I am and my lead singer, Harley, is looking at Crucitrix is me and her are kind of the COO of Crucitrix, the business. And we will oversee everyone else within that business. That's what COOs do. They don't
power tripping,
do the day-to-day stuff. They get people in who do the work and oversee that work. Okay?
All right.
So
do I have to get a suit? That's what I want to know. Have I got to buy a suit? Because I don't like ties.
Your birthday suit will be fine.
Okay.
Depending on your audience. Okay.
Over 18s only.
Over 18s, yes. Again. So here's what you do. Obviously, the first thing you need to do is find. We're going to call these people candidates. Okay. Okay. So you find the candidate, and the candidates can range from friends, families, students, have-a-go heroes like yourself.
We do what try.
All the way up to professionals. So they can be anyone. Really depends on the task at hand, okay? So once you've found your ideal candidate, who you think might be your ideal candidate, is that you set up a meeting with that candidate, okay? Now, this can kind of, the way that this initial conversation will vary depending on whether they're a professional and you're paying them, or whether or not they're kind of just doing it for free, okay? Now, if you're paying them, you can be a lot more direct, saying, this is what we expect you to do. And, but you've also got to have in mind the way in which you'd approach someone who's working for free, okay? So in that meeting, you do not tell them your goals. You literally just, that initial conversation, you only talk about tasks and you keep it quite broad. So, for example, we've got people doing our social media. We've got one guy, Jamie, he's doing it for free. And we've got a new guy called Bobby. He is a paid for entity, as it were. Right. So we're paying him to do our social media. Now, in this meeting, because you're keeping things broad, what you're essentially saying is you're saying to them, what can you do? What is realistic for you to do? So you're not coming at it from a level of expectation from you of I want you to do this. You're coming at it from, what can you do? And in that initial, especially if you're working with someone who's free, they can then, obviously, hopefully within the real world of what they can deliver, will tell you exactly what they can and what they can't do. And then based off of that conversation, because you know your goals, and you've got them probably written in your little notebook, hopefully there.
Not yet, but
You can say, well, you can kind of look at it and go, okay, well, it aligns at least 10% of the way there, or something like that. That's going to save me a lot of time. So Jamie, for example, he's doing our social media, but he's purely creating content. So he's doing the camera work, he's doing putting the stills together and all this sort of stuff, which is a huge chunk of time for us.
it is.
So even though he's taking on what would be 30% or whatever, he's not doing the ideas, he's doing the stuff on the ground.
Right.
He's saving us a lot of time and a lot of energy. Bobby doesn't do that. He's the ideas guy, he's the manager, he's very much kind of, this is the content we need to produce, you guys need to go and produce it, and then I'll put things like the captions and the hashtags and all of that sort of stuff will then come together. Right. So the two of them working together forms, hopefully over time, a social media machine, as it were. That's the idea. But it stemmed from having a conversation, because we had Jamie before Bobby. I haven't actually met Bobby. I think Harley's away in Berlin at the moment doing some networking stuff. Right. That's what she does. When she comes back from Berlin, we're going to have a meeting with Bobby, and we're going to find all of this stuff out, how he wants to manage the social media. And then it's down to us and Jamie to produce that content for him to then manage and put out.
Wow.
And that's how it's going to work. Hopefully in a very successful way.
Well, I will be very intrigued, as will the listener and viewers, to know how that pans out. That's okay. That's quite a lot.
Like I say, when we first spoke to Jamie was going to purely take on our social media himself, and he's basically saying that the deal was, when we reached 100,000 followers, then we would start paying him. And over time, it's kind of emerged that he's much better with just doing the content, and he's got a lot of other stuff going on. So the free element then becomes a bit kind of skewed in a way. We've looked at it more from a perspective of, well, Jamie still wants to be involved. He loves making content. He loves doing that aspect of it. But the management side of it and the rest of it, he's not kind of there with it. And he's not, but that only stemmed from a conversation that we had with him, as in, well, what do you want? What can you deliver? As opposed to, we expect you to deliver this.
Which is, it puts the onus on them as opposed to you being the sergeant major, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now, there's another element to this. What we do in Green Wave Productions, what I'd suggest to my clients is, if you're working in this way, if you're working with anyone, okay, what you have is we set out goals. Now, what we do is we call those goals here at Green Wave Productions, we call them macro successes.
Right.
And then what we do is we look at the steps that need to be taken to achieve that macro success. And each of those steps we call micro successes.
Right.
You may have heard me talk about this in my content, or not. Right. But I'm a big advocate of micro successes, because the micro successes is what gets you to the macro successes, gets you to the big successes.
Right, okay.
If you've got someone that you're not paying, every time you achieve a macro success, obviously depending on the macro success, reward them in some way. Give them something like a bottle of wine, a gift card, something like that. Thank them for their time and their efforts and their energies.
Well, I've been trying to do that with the chap that's been helping me be on the back end. I just haven't got around to sorting something out for him yet.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think this is really, really important, because people do get disillusioned. If you're doing loads of work and all you're getting is, oh, cheers, mate, I'll see you later. Yeah, you kind of go thinking, oh, okay. Oh, thanks. sort of thing.
It's a valid
as
point.
nice, as nice as people can be. But obviously, I mean, again, it needs to reflect the work that's been done. So let's say, for example, you want to get 1,000 followers on TikTok. Let's say you put a time frame on it of 6 months.
Right.
Well, that's around about 100, quick maths, 160 odd followers a month. So if you hit 160 followers a month, then the person, so Jamie, for example, he would get a bottle of wine or an Amazon gift card or something like that. And it's like a fiver. Something like that. Do you know what I mean? It's not a huge amount of money.
There's something.
But it's a level of appreciation. And then when you hit that macro success, that big success, do something not extravagant, but something big that you all can be involved with. So what I always say is go out as a band, take everyone out that's involved, go and have a meal, and it's on the band. If someone, even if you're paying them, okay, so for the macro successes, we'd take Bobby out for a meal and would say, you leave your wallet at home, this is on the band. This is a big thank you just to say, well done, we've hit whatever goal we've achieved, and this is our appreciation of your time and your effort on top of what you've been paid. But that's why I would say if you're not paying them, celebrate the micro successes with that other person, with that person. If you're paying them, then they're already getting the micro success appreciation for you paying them each month. But when you hit that macro thing, celebrate it, and then celebrate it as a band.
That's a good idea. I'm doing it.
You're all involved. You're all working towards something, and if it's if you've hit something, celebrate it. Why not?
Sound advice, Pete. I plan to do that when the album's done with the guys. I said, look, we'll all go out for a meal. We'll sit and listen to the whole album, its entirety. I said, and after we've done that, I said, we'll go away and we'll have a meal. I said, it'll be on me.
Yeah, and that's a really good way of working it. And people really appreciate that at the end of the day. And it's, again, from a business perspective, you can consider it's a perk of the job. And it's one of those things that a lot of businesses do. They'll say, the Christmas do, for example, and stuff like that. That's a common thing. And for a lot of businesses, if they land a big client, or if they hit a big target or something like that, the whole company will go out and have a few drinks and celebrate it. You can do that just on a smaller scale, and it keeps those wheels greased, shall we say?
It makes everything worthwhile, doesn't it?
Yeah, and at the same point, it's not all just work. Come on, let's get this done. Blah blah blah. And you're not one of those shitty bosses that's just like, oh, we need to hit target this month, and all the rest of it. It's coming at that perspective of, what, we've all worked really hard. We've achieved something. Let's go out and celebrate. Let's have a giggle.
Yeah, which we don't do an awful lot of. It's usually work, isn't it?
So I feel like that covers pretty much everything, as much as we can in the hour that we got for this podcast. And I hope that it's been helpful for everyone. And like I say, this episode is one I feel that we're going to refer back to a lot through our educational journey, as it were, with this podcast. And we're going to say, go back to episode 4, listen to that, and then come back to this episode, because the framework is there. All you need to do is build upon those foundations. But I just want to thank everyone for listening and being involved, and follow, subscribe, do all the things that helps this podcast get into more ears, because it's I feel it's essential stuff if you want to forge a career in the music industry in the 21st century. And there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of, I hate to say the word,
Well, it's true. It is
a lot of crap out there, and hopefully this cuts through that and is a lot more practical advice, because it's stuff that we're doing on the ground. So thank you to everyone, and we will see you in the next show. Bad Life Podcast!